And welcome to Shadows of Dawn. And these are my friends, the Serend Defenders. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
Salutations.
Hello.
So with us we have Tella Trimblewind. I'm sorry, Lord Tella Trimblewind.
That's right.
We have the Marquis Trent Trimblewind. They're cousins.
Just call me Marquis for short.
Yeah, Marquis for sure. And we have, I believe it ended up Guide Eldor the Agile with us. So these are the Serend Defenders. This is the Serend Defenders campaign recap. We have, we're going to just kind of talk in recap. I think we had 17 episodes in this, but I think the one thing I should point out real quick is this group was a little different than the other two groups I DM'd, because this group, we really met at a bar, per se. We met at a gaming store. So prior to us actually playing, or these guys like playing, you know, with me particularly as a DM, we didn't know each other. So that was different. I'm pretty sure you guys were like, who's this guy? How's he going to DM? You know, is this going to suck or whatever? You know, what were some of your guys' thoughts coming into that? That was, since this was all new. Don't everybody go same thing.
Okay. I definitely wanted something a little more like streamlined and put together, because I'm the type that I like having different styles of play as often as I can. In the last few, and still the games I'm in now, they tend to be more like, hey, let's hang out. And if a story develops naturally, that's fine. Whereas this was definitely like, I want the role play experience.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, you guys knew, I guess the other thing about this group, which is a little different than like the Dragon Slayers group, is you guys already knew that there was a group playing in the world too. And you knew that you were coming in and you were going to be the second group playing in the world. So you kind of had that ahead of you. How did that affect your thought process, or did that, do anything? Was it like, hey, cool, or was it like, we're just going to be second, or what's the...
No, I don't think it really changed anything for me personally. It wasn't until I saw the site, when I saw the Figma website, that I was like, oh, okay, like this is way more involved between the groups than I thought it was. I honestly thought it was going to be, yeah, you have a group over there playing within the world, and then we're doing our own thing here within the world. When we actually started to see everything start to weave together, that's when I was like, oh, okay, so we're actually like going to be interacting with one another within the world, which is really cool.
That
I
was
wasn't
the
expecting
hope.
that level. Yeah.
You know, I didn't think about it until we actually had lunch together. You know, when we met at the restaurant, when we got to put faces and names together. It's like, okay, that's who you are, and that's, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. That was kind of the long game, I guess, for me. That was the grand experiment, if you will. You know, once I kind of had you guys going and the first group going, then I was like, well, let's add another group. I don't know if I'll add a third one again. That was a lot of work, but but it was good. I thought it worked out pretty well. So this group played weekly. We played weekly, and that, in a way, I guess it was good. For me as a DM, it was good, and it was tough. Where the other groups would have these long RP sessions using Facebook and whatnot, ours was at the table. So it kind of made it easier in a way, for everybody to kind of be there while these RP things were happening, because we would have, every once in a while, we'd have a session where it was almost nothing but RP and downtime and taking care of things in between adventures. Whereas the other groups, a lot of that was done online. So from a DM perspective, this group was different in that regard. In the same time, this group played for 3 hours a week, where when we had the other groups that were talking, 6 to 8 hour sessions kind of thing, like one big long shot. So it really kind of took this group, 3 weeks to do what another group did in one session in offline RP. So from a timing perspective, that's kind of how I had to balance it out. Well, let's dive in. So for those who are following along, want to kind of figure out what we're doing here, on the PC page, if you go to the Figma site and you go to the Serend Defenders, We have the roster, of course, and then we have the story so far. So that's what we're looking at, is we're looking at their story so far. And I titled their book New Horizons Book 1. And their first episode was The Test, Eldor's favorite episode.
Yeah.
So the adventure began by bringing them together, kind of a combined interest. And you guys started in Tindleton, which was different, probably one of the roughest towns out there, maybe next to Snowshore Harbor. But really just adventurers looking to adventure, and they heard about an opportunity where they had to go, and you guys had to go out into the woods and meet at this shrine. And then, of course, you got attacked. Got attacked by
And it
zombies.
was planned. It was a planned attack.
It was a planned attack, and
By someone calling themselves lawful good.
I don't think Eldor ever forgave the lawgiver for
No.
commanding the undead. He could control them, so he could call them off whenever he wanted to. He just wanted to see if you guys could hold your own.
Yeah, but it's one thing if it's bandits, but these were undead, which we never had any experience with.
Well,
Hey, but it made for good experience, though, because I think we went straight to level 2 after that, didn't we?
right? See,
Yeah.
Okay.
For those of us who lived.
Yeah.
you all lived. It was like get the rookies off the bench kind of thing. It's like, hey, look, hey, if you're going to get into this profession, you got to kind of prove yourself. And then, of course, he sent you off to the old Copperwood Shire, basically to retrieve some scriptures of God. So just kind of very small adventure where you guys had to go out there and just kind of retrieve some items. But you were kind of interesting was in your very first episode, you met Radicus, who ends up working for the Hunters Guild and ends up playing kind of a pivotal part way down the line, especially for the like the Fellhammer group, because he was kind of key to what happened with Avantgarde much later. But you guys met him really early. And of course, Tindleton. How would you describe Tindleton?
Corrupt.
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't. So
It's lovely for other people.
it's true. So that was
Also,
the first
really
one.
quickly, if I may,
Yeah.
the scriptures of God. Just so you know, you let me copy them, and were in my inventory the entire time because they were his first things he got from adventuring. So,
Well, I mean, explain. So I guess in a way, explain Treant to anybody who's watching and trying to understand Treant's motivations, because his were a little bit different than most of the other characters that kind of came at it. Most of the other characters kind of had a normal life and were like, hey, I want to go adventuring kind of thing.
I had a normal life for someone locked in the attic for 16 years of his life, and just grew up on books and had heard of adventures. And my cousin, Tella, had convinced me to go be an adventurer like my novels, because he would feed me his bard tales he would learn in his college. And so out of 17 episodes, I think for the first 14, at least once, I would say I'm an adventurer. Like, that was my thing. This whole reason for being was to finally be an adventurer.
And I'm not a noble. I remember that one too.
Oh, yeah.
Very early.
Well, you're a noble. Okay. I'm not a noble.
I'm not a noble. Yeah, so he was a sheltered, locked in, shut in, kind of kept as a family secret, because he was a divine soul, and the family would kind of rent out his healing since he had this natural gift. And so they kept him locked in the attic so they could make money until he finally got too old to do it. So he was very naive about the whole world. And of course, Tella, his older cousin's like, come along. And, I had to kind of watch you two kind of do that interplay with family. So episode 2 kind of came along pretty quick after luring Radicus out of hiding. This was also kind of interesting too, because Buzzy Fromberg ends up playing a role not just for you guys, but for the Fellhammer group as well. And you guys, and I think even the Dragon Slayers met Buzzy Fromberg. So what do you guys? I mean, do you remember much about this episode? This was just a little goblin episode who were kind of invading his minds, and you guys went in and cleaned them out. But then after that, y'all wanted to get into business.
Yeah.
Well, no, the nobles wanted to get into business.
Yeah.
Wanted, we did. We got
did.
into it.
Yes,
we had long game plans for Tindleton through that one little copper mine.
Yeah. Long game. So you guys, that was kind of funny because you guys went in, laid down some money, and man, now that I'm thinking about it, I had kind of forgotten it was this early. That you guys were playing that super long game already, and you guys kind of got into business with Buzzy Fromberg. But this started to unfold. This episode started to kind of unfold a little of the tail end of the Dragon Slayer saga, who had kind of started out with this whole fiend thing. There was fiends that were on the loose, and that's what they were dealing with. And so I had several generals of themes, and in episode 3, that's when you finally meet one of the generals, Night Spike, and turned out to be a shadow demon. So he was the one that was kind of behind the little goblin things, and you guys had tracked him out to, I believe this was south of Tindleton. Yes, it was Homestead, south of Tindleton. And there, you had gotten some evidence from goblins and humans, and then tracked the goblins out back to the woods that were just north of Glissondale. And there, that was the ruins. That was the one where I think it was Sir Luca who was trying to climb the tower.
Yeah.
Like your whole party is fighting inside the tower to go up, and Sir Luca's on the outside, and they're actually making the same pace.
Yeah. I egged him on, so it's kind of maybe my fault. I'm the one that gave him the grappling hook after all.
It's like, here, climb the outside of the tower. So the party's going inside the tower, and they're fighting things, and at the same time, he's failing his climbing check, so he slides back down or can't move. And then I think he made it to the top. Was it like on the very last round of the fight at the top or something? Or
No, I think, didn't he make it there?
He beat us. I thought.
Yes,
he beat us.
Because he was the first one up there.
Okay, so
Yeah.
he was the first one up there then.
But we weren't anticipating the wormling up there.
Right, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then there were 6 versus him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of
So it
level
was just
2.
him with a whole bunch of
That's what it
dredges and the wormling, and he was going down fast. So.
Yes. And you guys basically are hearing screams, and you rushed up. That's right. I remember now.
Yeah.
Yep, I remember that. So yeah, you guys had that was, I think, having. I mean, it's Dungeons and Dragons after all, right? So you had to have a dragon. Of course, I don't think Bran was with us, or he had been able to tell his girlfriend about a dragon.
That's right.
So he wasn't then.
When did he join us?
A little
After
later.
he left, right? Yeah, because he took the Sir Luca's place, right? Bran took Sir Luca's place.
No, Cat
Or
did.
is that Cat? No, Cat took
Cat.
Sir Luca's place.
I think Bran came in Bran was playing the Furbolg.
Furball, yeah.
That's
He was playing the
right.
Furbolg at the time, who couldn't socialize very well because he hadn't quite worked it out yet. I guess we just didn't hear about the girlfriend. So yeah, so his dwarf hadn't seen it, but his Furbolg did.
That's
And
right.
the
Clay was
Furbolg is
playing,
now actually
yeah.
retired in Serendshire, so he's actually an NPC out there. So episode 4. This is so Eldor was in the Hunters Guild, so you got the map, and this starts the Night Glow mark, right? This is Eldor Night Glow. So
Yeah.
Eldor, you want to tell a little bit about your backstory, because your backstory kind of started getting woven in here.
Right. So basically, I had a father who was a craftsman making bows, who made a bow for a noble, and apparently we never proved it, but I strongly suspected the noble killed him and my mother and took the bow without having to pay for it. And so my goal was to track down the bow and see if I could make some connection between the bow and the killing of my parents back to the noble. And that kind of set the stage for my whole progress. Was always distrusting nobles, even though we had 2 nobles within our group.
Which was kind of funny. It's like he had this whole like revenge thing going, and
Yes.
of course I was like tied it right into the Delmar family in Tindleton, having them come from Tindleton, and then of course, unbeknownst to me at the time, he's coming up with a backstory, and then Tella and Trent decide, hey, we're going to play noble backgrounds. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
So
I did not know that about you. Now I understand why you're so distrustful of nobles.
see, should express more,
Like I knew about Nightglow, the bow and everything. I didn't know this backstory about the nobles, about you thinking that the nobles were the ones behind it. I thought it was just the sure shot guy. That.
No, I believe that because the bow had been commissioned by the was it the Duke or the Count?
The Count at the time.
The Count. And so I thought, in my young half elf's mind, that the Count had commissioned it, but then tried to get away by not having to pay for it by killing my parents and taking the bow.
I'm
Right.
probably jumping, but how did Sure Shot get it then? Whatever the kid's name was. I remember Sure Shot, his title. But...
Yep,
Yeah.
that was it. Well, and that's in one of the other episodes that we come across.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Ask that question again when we get there.
All right, heard.
Because we had the whole Fillmore Drake incident and everything, and so
Yes. Damn that name.
so this is actually, so they got this map, and Eldor has this night glow mark on it, and it points to an area southeast of the crags across the Talaran River. So this is where you guys go to, and you find the Temple of Night, and this is important because really this in a way, this kind of had 3 pivotal events, whether you knew it or didn't know it at the time. And the first one was poor Sir Luca. Whenever you get 2 saving throws against a creature, you probably don't want to voluntarily fail the second one, because the creature, which was you never identified it.
Angry Ball?
It was an angry,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was something like that, yeah.
It's like an angry wolf or angry something, and it turned out it was a basilisk, and
Yeah.
and so the lament of Sir Luca was penned
One
by
of-
Tella,
Yeah, one of Tell's best songs.
and the second was you released something from a coffin, and the contents said it would not touch you for a year and a day. So that's kind of pivotal. You never really found out what that was all about. So that's left on the side. But so as a DM, I'll leave that there. And then the third one was you came across the information that connected Captain Fillmore Drake to the map and the Nightglow bow, right? So this is kind of where you discovered that the captain was involved in something to do with the disappearance of the bow.
Right.
Which isn't good. So then
So-
go ahead.
Okay. Now, so I was just wondering, so is the shadow thing, because I kept thinking about that, and is it going to come back in the next campaign, or is it going to be something that's going to be tied to the Serend Defenders directly?
Well, it just said it couldn't touch you for a year and a day.
But it's been a year and a day.
It has been a year and a day. But it could touch other people all it wanted to. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
We'll see. It's one of those things that it kind of semi hung out there, and I will say, and I'm not going to I don't want to give too much away because there's still some things that can happen. Another group came across the same creature, whether they realize it or not. So I don't want to give it away. I'm going to leave that one out there, just kind of, But that creature did go somewhere else, and another group did encounter it. So had you not released it, it would not have been there.
Nice.
So have one thing affected another. So episode 5, the source of shadow. So now with Night's Fight, you guys were kind of involved in the Fiend story arc. So you're kind of coming on the kind of midway through the Fiend arc. But you're also working the Nightglow bow arc. So you're kind of dealing with that one too, right? So here, you trace the information to find Fillmore Drake, who you captured. This is the one where you went into the brothel / gambling establishment.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
And
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
One
and
of the
Tom-
most awkward roleplay scenes ever. Like, as a naive person.
oh, now you got to tell it. You got to tell the story.
Like, I hired a worker and a militia, basically, to teach me about the acts that they were doing. But since I was a note taker in the group, I find it easier to roleplay a note taker in real life. So he's sitting there, quill and ink, just taking notes.
Well,
That's
they're having
funny.
sex right in front of him.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then I decided to impersonate a god.
Yep, that was another one. And here you kind of learned that it was Fillmore Drake who probably had a hand in the death of Eldor's father. Now, whether he was commanded to or not, that was kind of left. You didn't really know at the time.
but he was Fillmore Drake was the captain of the guard for the noble. So
Correct.
I just assumed that.
Of course, you assume that.
Of course, yes.
But he, what was weird is, the bow didn't go to the Count. He admitted that he had sold it to an upstart adventurer called Sure Shot. So this is where that Sure Shot. So, maybe, not to give the whole story away. I like kind of leaving this one a little mystery, but maybe he didn't mean to kill him, or maybe he did and then realized it was too hot. Maybe, he didn't, maybe he did it and then the Marquis was like, dude, I can't take that now, so get rid of it. So, something happened where he didn't just hand it over, but he ended up selling it. So then you had to trace him and find out who this upstart Sure Shot was. And that's where it took you to the Pack Rat Storage, which has the best rope scene out of all three groups.
Oh, please, Eldor.
So, so they go to the second level of Pack Rat Storage, which for anybody who is a pop culture fan, it was level, and they do their levels, and they just put an LV. It was level 2, room 46, LV 246. Any Aliens fans out there, you should appreciate that. So they go in this one little room, and all that's in the room was a chest. And then they open the chest, and there's just this, it's like a tunnel that just goes down. So one of the climbing down a rope tricks, I think this was Eldor, wasn't it? Was it Eldor?
Yes.
Well, I think he goes to roll. It's like you have to descend a rope. It's like just a regular rope, so it's like a DC 10. I think you rolled a 3 or something.
Something. And the very ironic thing is we had a rope of climbing.
Yep.
That's
And then somebody else goes, you want to use the rope of climbing? Which makes the DC 5. So there's almost practically no chance to fall. And Lordor's laying at the bottom going, why didn't you say something?
But there were 2 people that failed the climb check. Because I remember, because the only reason I decided to burn a spell, I misty stepped into the room or down there because I was like, I don't want to have to climb this. I remember 2 people failing it, and I was like, I don't want to fail this. I don't have anything in climb in athletics.
Who knew just a simple rope would be like one of a deadly trap or near deadly.
But that was the thing about our group. A lot of us ended up dumping strength as our stat. So we had like nothing in athletics.
That's true. So that was there were 2 things I think interesting about the Serend Defenders. Number one, with the loss of Sir Luca, the Paladin, there was no true tank in this group. And then everybody else basically had dumped strength. I think the highest strength might have been well, at this point, I forget if the Furball had left yet, but when it was the Furball, it was like, I think 10 was the highest strength.
Yeah.
There was like several 8s in the party.
Yep.
So
I think the wizard had a 10.
Yeah.
I had a 10. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was me. Eldor had 8s, and then Brand originally had a 9, but because he got the gauntlets
Yeah.
of the yeah,
Eventually, he got the gauntlets, and that really helped him a lot.
and then everybody else had either 10s or 11s.
So this was also an interesting story, and this was when you. Oh, actually, at this point, I think Kat had joined the party because she brought in the fighter, the Red Rampart. She brought her in because this is where you find the deck of many things, and then exit the paladin.
Yeah.
Like a session and a half later.
Yes,
Fine.
I mean
Yeah,
literally. I
paladin
think
and-
the paladin was, or the new paladin, or the new fighter, Cat's fighter was literally there for like a session and a half, and then got her souls taken by the deck of many things. So,
Yeah.
have you guys? I mean, so the deck of many things, from a DM perspective, was being used by the fiends to basically see if they could foil you or get rid of some of you, which it did. Like stole her soul, so one down, and they're like, nah. But
And the freeboard became wealthy beyond imagination. Said, forget this adventuring shit. I'm
That's
going
right.
to retire.
Yep, that was the first, and that's where the Furbolg retired, is because he drew the gems card.
Yeah.
So he drew the gems card and basically immediately retired, and then that's why Bran came in.
Yeah.
That's why Bran came in, is because the Furbolg retired.
And the Treants drew the Sage card, right?
Yeah. I got a truthful answer to one question, and then the Staff of Charming,
Yes.
which I carried with me until episode 17.
Pretty
And
much.
until episode 17, I could not use it because of like the charisma saves and all that.
Yeah.
And that's the one time I decided to leave it at home. And I was like, okay, this is fitting. This is fine. Like,
He got beneficial magic item, which he carried for the next, pretty much until the very, very, very end of his career, like literally the last episode. So that lasted him quite a while. So had you guys, I don't know how many times, if you guys have ever like drawn from a deck of many things. I think in one of the other groups, it was like the first time a lot of them had even done it.
As players?
Yeah.
No, I've never drawn from it. I think we've only played one other game where the deck was actually involved, like between Victor and myself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think we've only played one other game that actually had a deck involved.
it's been a long time. Like I was the younger sibling that my older brother was like, oh, I want to learn how to play D&D. I have players. Like, and so we were D&D. And so being a young DM, he did the like, here's every item ever. But that was 15, 20 years ago now.
Like one of our viewers, Tiffany, says, it scares me. She's petrified to draw from the deck of many things.
Yeah, that was Tella too. Tella, I was at that point, I remember being so attached to Tella as a character because the Furbolg left, Vester died, Luca died, and I was like, okay, I'm really attached to my character. I don't want to give any reason for me to lose Tella, and I was petrified to draw from the deck for that reason. So I don't want to lose Tella.
But yeah, it was there as a ploy, and I think at this point you guys are about 5th level or so. So yeah, I mean, you've done some stuff and you've gained some reward, and it could really help you out. But at the same time, you've done some stuff and you've gained some reward, and it could really set you back. This group, apart from Vistra getting her soul sucked, this group made it out pretty well. I don't think there were anybody else who was really scathed. I think Thomas got something. I forget what happened to him. But it wasn't... I think he lost all his money or magic items or something. That might have been what he did, but he wasn't super rich, so it wasn't that huge.
We were level 5, so...
Yeah. So it wasn't that huge of a setback for him. But that was that. And so, yes, that's what the Fiends were doing. They were trying to get you to kind of destroy yourselves by drawing from the deck, and they were taking a risk to see what would happen. So Heroes Rising, episode 6, you met with Lawgiver Solaris. So what did you guys think of the Lawgivers and the whole setup? I mean, the Lawgivers were kind of pivotal instruments that NPCs you guys would run with. We know Eldor hates them.
player or as a character?
Both. I mean, a player.
A character had like Trent was like, yeah, no, this makes sense. This is part of the world. I've read about them. They're fine. They're fine. They're a little snooty, but they're fine. As a player, I utterly hate lawful good. I utterly hate any kind of
they're lawful neutral. They're not lawful good.
Oh, even worse. I don't like them, but I understand that people like that exist in real life, so they have a right to exist in Avangard. I will stay in Glissondale. Thank you.
Well, they roam the valley, right? Regularly.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're like, well, they're pretty much like emissaries. So,
yeah. I don't know. With Tella, it was just the fact that I was playing a chaotic good character, and I was like, well, I can't really be, elbow to elbow with the law. But Tella, I think, still respected the lawgivers, mainly because of the history of Avangard, and because I feel like he was so well read and educated in the college that he knew the history of the lawgivers, so he understood their purpose. Which even as a chaotic person, I think it made it possible for him to still work with them. Because I think Tella took a liking to both Solaris and Angelina very quickly.
Yeah.
Especially Solaris. So.
Yeah. He was kind of one of the first ones most of the group.
I didn't trust Solaris.
Because he sicked the undead on you.
That's right.
But he got you level 2.
Must be a necromancer.
So here was the episode where you had to rebuild the portal. So this is kind of one of the first times I think you guys really had maybe some downtime, and we were using the downtime rules, but so a couple of you were working on the portal, so your downtime was consumed in rebuilding the portal, and
with amazing rolls. That was amazing.
Took a little money, took some effort. At this point, I think Zelda's in the group because Vistra had her soul sucked, so the wizard's now in the group. So you had the wizard and Tella, I think, who were working to rebuild the portal. This is where you also cross information linking Emil Rosario to the Delmar family. So this was kind of pivotal in the Fiend storyline, as he was one of the ones who was the Fiend Jaban was having to do some work for him, mainly to mess with the Dragon Slayers of Velspar. But you guys found information that connected him to the Delmar family. And I think at the same time, you also, in this episode, is where you started to hear some whispers of a new cult that was starting to rise. So I was already kind of getting ready for that next arc with the Earth cult, starting to get that out there. But here is where you discovered Nightspite's hidden lair, and he was trying to build the Alliance, and that's when you discovered the cult of the Black Earth. And the Fiends is basically, at this point, I think Jaban had been killed, so the main leader of the Fiends was dead. Denif had been killed already, so his first general is dead. So Nightspite's grasping at straws, and so he's reaching out to the cult of the Black Earth, but you guys managed to take Nightspite out, and at the same time, you uncovered the cult of the Black Earth. And here, Eldor finds his bow. Eldor finds his bow. So this episode actually has...
By the help of 2 nobles.
With the help of 2 nobles.
Yeah. Okay.
And a lawgiver. So this episode, I mean, I guess if you look back on this one, end of a Fiend General, Arc 1, beginning of the Cult of the Black Earth, which is story Arc 2. It also culminates in the Nightglow arc, coming to fruition, being closed. So when you look back on it, that's kind of 3 big things that kind of happened in this episode.
Yeah.
Kind of cool when you kind of sit back and look at it. But I think there was one more. We had one more episode. You didn't defeat Nightspite. Nightspite, yeah, that's right. Nightspite got away.
Yeah. Right.
Yes, and the last one was Endgame. It was tracking down Nightspite to his lair, and so he got away. You tracked him down in episode 7, Endgame, and this is where you killed Nightspite. And this is also where you linked Lord Trevor Delmar and Lord Emil Rosario. together. So now you're kind of peeling back some of the Del Mar ties. Although nothing, to Eldor's great dismay, nothing is linking Count Calvin Dulac Del Mar directly.
Yeah, but they're all crooked.
They're
They're nobles.
Yep, Lord Commander's like, Denif, back to hell with that critter. Definitely. Well, Denif was actually the first one to go, so you got Denif first. They took out Denif first, and then they got to Japan. But so Nicebite was trying to do anything he could to basically hang on and survive. And I think this was, you also met Lady Raven Avantgarde here on her way to the wedding in Velspar. So you've taken out Nicespite, you're coming back into Tindleton, and this is where that meeting goes down in Tindleton that gets the bounties taken off the Dragon Slayer's head. Sarenshire gets its independence. Yeah, Sarenshire gets its independence, and you guys were partially to thank for that because you had the evidence that linked Trevor Del Mar to Emil Rosario, who had been linked to Japan by the Dragon Slayers. And all of that proof was kind of presented, and you had a noble council, which y'all could take part in because guess what? You had nobles. So that was, I guess this was probably the first time you really had direct in-game contact with another group, per se. So you kind of talked about that already a little bit, but this was one instance where both the efforts of both parties were pivotal in something that was happening in the world. So how did you guys, that kind of culminated book one. So at this point, I guess, how did you guys see the world as being reactive to your actions? I mean, was that coming across? Was that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and also like that last bit was so, at least for me as a role player, so necessary because then I could go less naive and realize that there are nobles that aren't doing their best, and that became Trian's new thing of like nobles should be taken care of, that we have the resources, we have the ability, why are we not taking care of people?
Okay.
Which is why, like, for the rest of the time, he was always like, oh, I need to volunteer my time, my money, everything. So.
A lot of his money.
Yeah. All of his money.
All of his money. Some of Tella's money.
Yeah, some of Tella's money too.
So, speaking of Trient, episode 8, Sacred Stones. The Sacred Stone Monastery outside of Glissondale. This is where you discovered, let's see. This is where the Cult of the Black Earth is starting to reel their head. I forget if this is the exact episode where Trian is connected. So, yeah. Trian, being that he had this locked in the attic background, this was one of those where I was like, this player just made a character ripe for the picking for a DM. So I kind of quickly developed that, his parents weren't really his parents, kind of thing. Well, actually, I think you did that. You had your aunt and uncle that had locked you. So I went ahead and went further with your mom and who your real father was, and kind of played with that. And this is where you hear about Marlos Ernryle, who is a Cult of the Black Earth priest. So this is the elemental cults that are starting to come into the picture. And the Black Earth was the one, I kind of picked to be the I guess, more prime cult to work into the story. Just thought it fit better. And you guys went through the Sacred Stone Temple, which actually I really kind of took a lot of this out of the Princes of the Apocalypse. So it's still the Sacred Stone Monastery there. And most of the rooms were very similar to what is in the Princes of Apocalypse module. And if you ever read it or play through it, I think it's one of the best that they did for 5e. So I took this little part out and kind of like chunked that out because I really, really liked it. And here you actually found a young blue dragon. So this was kind of your second dragon fight. This is your first young dragon fight. And that actually went pretty well for you guys. So you guys did pretty well on that fight.
It was terrifying. I remember because some of us were really low on resources during that fight. Because I think I was only down to the cantrips and a couple of level 1s.
Right, and it was kind of a fight that was on a back end of another fight because it was in like the pit below, right?
Yeah.
And then once that top level fight was kind of done, then it popped up, and it was kind of like, oh, second fight.
Yeah, that's when I realized, okay, we're low on resources. We might die here.
The Serend Defenders were never known for resource management.
Yes, I thought there were a lot of times we should have taken short rests along the way, and it's like, we did, and it came back to bite us.
So this group would do something that was weird. At first, this group would string together a long period with a lot of rests. Then they'd run into something hard, and then for the next few fights, after every fight, they wanted to rest. It'd be like no rest, and then rest, and then no rest, rest. Which was a little. It was funny from a DM perspective. I was like, I'm not sure what they're gonna do. I really don't know. But you guys ran into one of the only monk NPCs, Lorian Evenstar, in this one. Monastic Order of Justice, and because he was a prisoner, and you freed him. And you found Lady Calliope Tremblewind, who had been kidnapped, because that's what kind of led you on this whole quest. Remember when she had been kidnapped? Mm-hmm. And you found that there was a deeper area below the monastery where Trient's father was being held, or he thought it was his father.
Yeah.
And so you had to get past this door. And
this one we had Saffron. Right?
Well, Saffron comes in kind of on the tail end of this one because you guys go down and you get into trouble in one of those too many fights. Kind of got like, you went through this whole thing. That's what happened. And at the very end, you Trient gets turned to stone. And Bran gets turned to stone. Yeah. That's right. There were two of you that got turned to stone in this one.
And didn't we have the ability to unstone one of you, but not the other? I don't.
We had contact with Vonmer, but they were doing their own thing, and they wouldn't be able to meet us until I think a week or 2 weeks. Right. Which is one of the reasons why we tried to find other routes.
Yes, I think you had the ability to unstone one of them because you had a greater restoration scroll.
Yes.
Or something. And
something.
So you were able to get one done, but then you couldn't. You had a problem because you couldn't get past the door again because I think whoever was stoned or something had whatever they needed to get past the magic door. So here's where you use the sending to call for help, and once again, the lawgiver sent help, but this was in the form of Saffron. So this is where you met. I think you'd met Saffron before, but this is actually where you actually kind of got to play alongside her for a while. So as a mercenary, she was out doing something with a couple other mercs and basically got a better offer. So they went to help, and she had a chime of opening who could open the door. So that they could come down, help you guys, and then y'all finished clearing out the dungeon because you took out the Earth Prophet, Marlos Ernryle, but you hadn't cleared the rest of the dungeon. You were going to try to finish off the other beasties that were down there. So she helped you with that, and then you were being cautious not to summon Ogremok, the Elder Elemental.
That's what it was. If you bathed the statue in it, undoes it.
Yeah. Oh,
But
that's what it was. Yes.
Treant,
We were
it
afraid.
would activate his blood.
The scroll we used on Treant's dad, because I remember
Yes.
Tella almost animated the statue that was dad and destroyed it in a fight.
Yep.
And so we decided to. That's who we decided to use the scroll on, to get Godfried back. And then we were afraid. We were being very cautious with him because of the blood of Urnrail and all that prophecy stuff.
So so you had to place the statue in the mud pit, and you had to anoint it with those certain things, and then it would turn to flesh again. But if it was the blood of Urnrail, then Ogremok would be summoned. And so they didn't do it with Treant, but they did it with the parents, because by now they'd kind of figured out that, okay, so Treant is kind of, he's Urnrail's son, who was also a noble, and his mother's son, who was a Tremblewind. And so they had gotten together, and then they had split. So when she left and she died, Treant went to live with his aunt and uncle, who raised him as their own, and he was really little. So this Treant kind of learned kind of his true background here, where his real father was actually an evil cultist and was trying to dominate the world.
And Hallmark doesn't have that for Father's Day cards.
No.
It's a noble.
So the divine bloodline that Treant has, this was Victor and AJ, was because he was the son of a cultist. So the divinity was extended to him through the Earth God, whatever his name is.
I don't know, because my thing was, if Treant doesn't know, I want to find out in character, and we never went down that route.
Right.
Because of that. Oh, am I an Urnrail or a Treblewind?
But that's actually a pretty good supposition there, Tella. I think you're the first one I've heard to actually articulate that idea. And
that's what I was assuming when it happened. But
yes.
And I even think Tella even knew, but he didn't want to say anything because family's so important to him. And he didn't want to give Treant.
You already have inspiration, Tella. You don't have to earn it again.
I didn't want to give Treant a reason to feel like he wasn't Treblewind.
A Tremblewind, right.
Yeah, Tremblewind, yeah. So that's why I don't think even Tella never really articulated or even put it together, or chose not to put it together or say it out loud, because he was afraid it might push Treant further away.
Yes. So it was one of those things. So this was actually, I think, Tiffany, who's watching, she actually did come and play Saffron for this episode. And that's when you all got to kind of meet her, and she was in the played the NPC, and then but yes, actually, Tella, you are correct, and that is, I will go ahead and reveal that, yes, his divine souled nature did come from his father's side, and it's the earth power, which is why he was the key to resummoning Ogremok back into the land, and his father, since he had been hidden, his father was trying to find him and figure out, where he had been put, and trying to track him down. And he didn't even know his name until, Treant began adventuring. And then he had a name, and then it's like, oh, well, maybe this is the one. He's got powers. And so that's why he started looking for him, which was kind of funny, because the Dragon Slayers, they're just walking down a road one day, going to another thing, and they get jumped by some of those guys on boulettes, and they're looking for, Treant Tremblewind, and they're like, "Who the hell's that?" They're like, they didn't know. And they're like, these land sharks just jumped out and attacked us, and I think they sent y'all ascending. And they're like, these guys are looking for you. So, which is kind of, because they didn't know the story. You guys had started digging into the story at that time, and I think this is right about the same episode, or just before this, because then. This is where you did do ascending to Vonmer, because Vonmer was the first priest capable of casting Greater Restoration, and you had to carry the statue back to Glissondale so you could meet up with him to get him unstoned, which you did. Yeah. So once again, two groups working together. Those cultists got smashed by the Dragon Slayers. Not as bad as the bandits did, but the
cultists. The aunt and uncle hid Treant, knowing the fact that the Black Earth was probably going to come after him. So
they didn't know the Black Earth was coming after him, but they knew that Marlos couldn't be trusted.
So his being stuck in the attic was purposeful. It wasn't just for gain.
it wasn't just for gain. Well, it was purposeful at first, and then it turned into for gain, for gain, and then it was one of those, self-justifying your reasons for doing it kind of thing in a way. It's like, oh, we're doing it for his own good, but we can make money too,
Yeah.
What in the Mama Fortuna? Like,
It's actually really I like that now. Like actually piecing all that together for Trient as a character. It's really well done. It's really interesting.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's one of those. I think a good story or good connections always come from bad things when people have kind of a good intent. It's like, I can see what you're trying to do. You just didn't pull it off the proper way, but you can go back and you can kind of see what their original intent was. Mm-hmm. But then there's tragedy that comes out of it. And that's kind of where I had Trent as far as his story went. It's like, they're hiding him for a good reason, but after years, he's been hidden. And they're like, we'll keep him hidden because that's what we need to do. But he's got these powers. Bring somebody in sick, touch him, healed. So that's what that. So moving along to episode 10, When Sleeping Art Wakes. And I got to tell you this, me personally, this was probably one of my favorite episodes, just from a DM perspective. When I wrote this one, I was just like, I like this. Because I think at this point, you guys were starting to crack open, there's artists in the Valley. There's actually, some detail here, and there's, different types of artists, and, they have different types of works and pieces, and just from a world building perspective, being able to infuse that cultured aspect into the Valley. And this was one that was going to let me tie it directly into your story. And then particularly, I'm bringing in the second elemental cult, which is the cult of air.
Mm-hmm.
Also, wasn't this about the time that Bran came with the folder that he had printed the entire website?
Yes.
That's everything. Like,
he had printed the entire website, the entire Figma site, and brought it to the table. And then, of course, I think I did updates a week later. I was like, your map's out. Yeah. But this one was a simple run-in from laborers who you guys, there was a symbol y'all had seen. Y'all had seen the Iron Fang symbol. Change that from gang to fang. Of that war pick. And you recognized a piece of art, and y'all connected that back, and you went to Emdel, who at this point, because nobles were fleeing Tindleton, they're trying to get out, you guys met the Fairmonts. And this was also kind of interesting because the Fairmonts had two little children that they had adopted, and they had adopted little Jack and Jill Fairmont out of Velspar, who had storyline. Jack and Jill actually had storyline with Braylin. They came from the same orphanage that Braylin came out of, and Braylin had taken a liking to them. And in the very beginning of the Dragon Slayers of Velspar arc, they were caught up in the curse, and they had been turned into wolves. And then Braylin's, wish at the Lost Shrine had turned them back into people. So
did we know they had been adopted?
Yes, they were adopted.
Yeah.
I don't remember knowing that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Guessing about the Fairmonts, I think they have to be adopted.
Yes, they have to be adopted, unless there's something we don't know. Yes, the Fairmonts are a gay couple, nobles and Emdel.
Okay, maybe I'm.
And I liked them. I liked their interplay and just how they fit. I thought it was great, and to go ahead and make them a gay couple, and and then I thought it was going to be a perfect fit for little Jack and little Jill because at this point they're trying to get out from under Tindleton, because while they managed to do enough favors to get titled and got it to stick, they were smart enough to get out as soon as they could so that their titles wouldn't be reanalyzed. And they were savvy enough to buy the warehouse where that art came from. And that's kind of how the whole tie-in is. They're cleaning out this warehouse that was a junk store of all sorts of stuff. and to really refine their business. And now that they're out from Tindleton and there's this oppression and all of that's kind of gone, now they're ready. Let's make this place a live. Let's have a family. Let's do some good in this town. So they're probably one of my favorites. I like them, and I like Daniel Warwick, who's the peasant noble in Imdell. He's probably also one of my favorites. Just his backstory, just some extra backstory from him. Not a lot of people learned it, but he's one of my favorites. But here's where you came across. You then went on from Imdell to Fellhammer, where you met the Tomlinson family, and one of the ancestors of that family had done an art piece called The Power of Air. And so you guys were kind of analyzing that. And y'all remember this episode?
Yeah, because the ancestor totally painted it.
Yes. Yeah. That is correct. In fact, the uncle didn't paint it because he wasn't that good. He sucked. So you guys kind of dug into some of that. You've got the painting analyzed by one of the senior, more professional artisans. And here's like, he didn't paint that. This is too good for his stuff. It had to be. And so you guys figured out that he had hired a master painter to paint his visions because he was having these visions. Because he wasn't good enough to paint it in detail. And this is where you went up into the mountains. Actually, you had to go to the west side of the Oakwood Forest and look from this view where this town used to be and see this mountain that was in this painting. And so you kind of had to mirror that. And then go up that mountain, and that's where you found the air elemental cult, very small cult. And that's where you came to claim the spear Wind Vane. So now you had two elemental weapons. You had Iron Fang that you got from the Black Earth cult, and you now had Wind Vane.
Wind Vane was yours, Eldor, right?
Yeah, I carried it. I didn't use it. I didn't even attune it until almost the last episode, I think.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because I think we went through a couple of adventures before you guys figured out it was finesse.
But it had some negative attributes to it, and I didn't want to taint myself with those attributes.
They weren't that bad. You mean the flaw? You're all scared of the flaws. You don't have to play the flaws too bad. So you got that, and this is kind of key because this is where you guys, which kind of goes into the next one, What Time Can Tell. As you made your way back to Fellhammer, the Delantry family approaches you about a painting that you had found by Lord Marlow Heath Delantry. And of course, Marlow Heath Delantry is only 3 years old. He's a noble. And y'all had found this painting in the Elemental Temple of Air. So you guys aren't the only ones who kind of come across the strange story of Marlow Heath Delantry. The Dragon Slayers in like their second episode had this time jump thing where they actually rescued him from a prison trapped in time. So it's like when they found him in time, he was in the body of like a 9-year-old, but he had lived for over 100 and something years. And so he was actually really smart and really talented. But when they freed him, it's like he was back in his 3-year-old body. So he's like back to a 3-year-old, like nothing happened. But then there's these weird things that are starting to happen, and you find like this painting, and it's like, how did this get here? Because he's not a lord, he's only a noble, and it's way too good for a 3-year-old to paint.
Yeah. When I asked about adopted kids, this is who I was thinking about, who you meant was adopted.
No. This is the Delantry child. So
yeah.
This family is the one who got caught up in the Dewarin Kessel massacre of episode 1 of the Dragon Slayers of Bellspar. So those two families had a wedding that kind of went wrong, and one of the cousins like ended up murdering everybody, caused a curse. So the Delantry family, from an NPC standpoint, had already had a lot of story with the Dragon Slayers, and so this is kind of your first intro into the Delantry family when you're coming back in here and learning about this little kid, and all because of a painting you guys found. That was interesting.
But I really liked it, like, this episode, because, like, I liked all the nobles. I know I annoyed my fellow players playing a noble, because I was like, no, I need 3 days. I need to see all these families. But I especially like the Delantry child, because, like, going from Treant to finally realizing, oh, hey, my childhood is not normal, when we had the opportunity to tell them, like, that's why Treant was like, no, he will have a normal life. He will not be weird. He has to just be a kid. So it was really fun.
So this is another one I think where was it Tella who started investigating the paintings and looking at his drawings. Well, he was doing drawings, and Tella starts looking at the drawings, and you find your next clue. A mountain standing in a boat. There's the trident and the Attican sickle, and so from here you kind of discovered that there was a location on Solomir Lake that if you looked from the right spot, once again kind of matching art to a location, that something was there. And so this is where you tracked over to just southeast of Velspar there on the Serend Lake, and that led to your first underwater adventure, and your only underwater adventure, actually.
Oh, we can't skip the froghemoth that almost killed everyone.
Oh, that's true. Froghemoths swallow people.
Yeah.
Whole. This you did, yep. And you had, well, this one had a big one. This one had the Froghemoth, and this one had a young Kraken. And you guys were in the Solomir Lake in caves under the bottom, and you had discovered part of an old town that had probably sunk into the lake years and years ago. Just, it's a whole different environment when you're having to deal with swimming, you're having to deal with breathing.
But none of us have strength or athletics.
Yes, and none of it has strength or athletics. So there were quite a few times when you're looking for that DC 10 athletic swimming check, and they're just kind of going nowhere. Except for those who had like the Cloak of the Manta Ray.
Yeah, exactly. I had that because I knew this. I knew Tella had no way of getting through any of that without something magical.
Yep. So some of those. But in the end, you ended up claiming the Trident Drown. So that was your third legendary weapon, and the water element weapon. So at this point, you had 3. And then this...
Which I stayed with.
Yeah. And at this point, that kind of sealed, this whole second book was really, from a DM perspective, it's about gaining power for you guys. I wanted you guys build up your power just a little bit, because book 3 you're going to need it. Because book 3, we start with the fall of the festival. Yay!
This was my favorite. I mean, playing this was my favorite one, and that probably because, we played at your place, and we could see, everything there in front of us. You had all the miniatures and the buildings and everything. Everything was just well laid out.
So yeah, coming from our preamble about miniatures and terrain and stuff, like the Eldor's probably going.
Yes.
It's like,
and the mechanics were fun for the battle too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it brought us together as a group. Like,
I think
before then we were, 6 adventurers, and then after this, I thought that we became the Serend Defenders.
Serend Defenders, yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's good. It's a growing moment. That's good to hear.
I mean, just like you destroying an entire town, but like
with the power of teamwork. But this was good. It was kind of fun to watch all the groups prepare for the fall festival. It's like, oh, I want to do this. I want to shop this. I want to socialize here. I'm networking. It's like I want to give a sermon on the mound. I want to build up, my church. So everybody's getting these
make
plans.
a magic item that I just needed one more day.
I know, right? And I was like, day 4. It's like I just had this clock like on day 4. It's like, and the horns. And yep. So 3 big hordes just kind of rushed the field. You guys did pretty well as far as lucking out on the dragon strafing and the dragon roars. There was like, so for example, the Dragon Slayers of Velspar got all 6. So all 3 strafes and all 3 roars. I don't think anybody else, I think you guys maybe got half of that. And I think Fellhammer 5 got half of that too. So they just kept rolling under 15% every round. And it's like, oh boy, here it comes again. Just pure luck.
And, Omar, didn't you animate a wagon and bring it up in the air? So we had the ability to go up in the air, and I thought that really was a key part, because we could attack the dragons from there, or we could shoot the orcs or whatever was coming on the ground.
Yep.
Yeah, it was the chimeras. Chimeras?
Yeah, it was the chimeras.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It was the chimeras. Yeah. Manticores.
Yeah.
Manticores. It was the manticores.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, the manticores were, you were able to engage the manticores because you could jump in the animated wagon, and anybody who reads the animated spell, they get flying speed, so they can fly. So, which actually this group made well use of. I think from this point on, they're like, wait a minute, I can animate a wagon for like 6 hours a day. At that wagon speed, how far can it get me? So these guys basically, introduced flying. Group flying to the valley via animated objects.
Pretty soon you'll see tele-air.
Yep. Please keep your tray tables in the upright and locked position. Don't fall out of the wagon. Of course, by the time you got there, Tello's like, I'm going to sleep. He's like, no adventuring today. But yeah, they were able to bypass a lot of like random encounters by using the flying wagon. Took all his spells, but he did. But yes, the fall festival happened, and this was like kicking off the big dragon incident. So unbeknownst to you, at this point in time, the Fellhammer 5's last episode had they had come across something going on north of Solomir, and what had happened is they went out into the woods and they come across these kobolds or goblins or something, and they fight them. And there's this little campfire. It's got this little green flame, and when they kill them, their little spirits would fly back to the green flame and come running back out and start attacking them again. Now, the Fellhammer 5 is the youngest of the group, so their ability to see through illusions and stuff was very limited, and they didn't even think about it. But they learned that if they ran over and put out the fire, all the little bodies disappeared. They died. They wouldn't be attacked anymore, and what they killed was just dead. So behind the scenes, there's actually an illusionist who's, once the kobolds die, he's doing the illusion of them flying back and coming back out and keep attacking. And then he hides and he runs away. Used invisibility, just goes away. So they get conditioned, and because this happens to them like 3 times, and they're kind of doing this big circular pattern because there's a path. And they get conditioned to put out the green flame, stop the bad guy. Put out the green flame, stop the bad guy. So when they figure out that this is a circle, they're like, well, let's go to the center of the circle. Brilliant. So they get to the center of the circle, and there is like a little kobold encampment, but there's no kobolds. So they walk in and they start investigating. Well, the floor drops and the whole kobold encampment falls into like an underground open area, right? It's still open to the sky, but it's about 15 feet down, and it's kind of like was a cave network. It was all built to collapse. So they drop down in there, and there is a green crystal. And there's a guy, and he says, protect the crystal at all costs. So what does the ranger do? He runs over, not our ranger, this is the Fellhammer ranger, runs over and he smashes the crystal. He's like, this will teach him. And that releases Kortash, the green dragon.
Oh.
Yes. So
damn rangers.
So the crystal could only be crushed by dragonkin, or Kortash's crystal could be crushed by a humanoid of good alignment. So the evil cultists couldn't crush it. The kobolds couldn't crush it. They couldn't just, sorry, Betty Sue, would you come out here and just crush this crystal for us? So Kortash had basically, since he's trapped in the body of these other things, he finally had been trapped in the body of a humanoid, something that could speak and was intelligent. So he laid this trap, and if you know green dragons, they're very tricky, and they set elaborate traps, and they're very devious. And so he laid this elaborate trap to get an adventuring group to come in and break his crystal. And that's what released him. And as soon as he did, he flew off and released Darnath by crushing his crystal. And he had Darnath go and release Mogili and Agrumar while he went and released Igriestor. And then, of course, Kortash, Agrumar, and Mogili went and attacked the Fall Festival. So all of that happened behind the scenes for those 3 dragons to get to the Fall Festival. And now you know. I left them all speechless. Wrong.
But what was your plan if they never crushed the crystal?
I don't know.
I
didn't have to go down that path.
Campaign.
There's something to say about reliability amongst players. It's like I knew the ranger would do it. I was just like, oh, he's so gonna do it. He's so gonna crush the crystal. Conditioning, operant conditioning. See, Pavlov. That's another one. Ring the bell. He crushes the crystal.
Ring the bell. Yeah.
So, episode 13, Into the Mountains. This episode was about striking back for the people. And you guys quickly discovered when you were attacked by the orcs that they had the symbol of the flamed dagger that you guys had been looking for. So you guys pretty much were like, we're leaving now and going off after the orcs because you were chasing down the flamed dagger, which would have been the 4th elemental weapon that you had been searching for. So you guys followed the orcs. And so here, I figured you guys were probably going to go after the orcs. But I had written all 3 modules going, well, there could be a chance that they decide not to. We'll see. And on one of the modules where the kobolds were involved was the only module where I had put the dragon. So I knew the orcs, there was not going to be a dragon at the end of that module. I knew the gnolls, there wasn't a dragon at the end of that module. But at the end of the kobold, there was. So what looked like might be the easiest actually turned out to be the hardest as far as the last room went. And it was kind of funny that that's where the dragon slayers went. The only ones who probably, they might have been able to kill Kortash there. It was going to be iffy, but they might have been able to. As far as the other groups, I don't think the other groups would have been able to kill Kortash at that point in time, especially with the way he had it set up. But you guys went after the orcs, so on to you guys.
Honestly, I did not get that as a player. I thought you had planned for it because, Thomas hates orcs, like the flaming dagger. Like it was honestly well manicured.
Yep. And yeah, he definitely had hatred for orcs. I know Eldor didn't like orcs.
Yeah.
And yeah, but other than that, it's like, yeah, the flaming dagger was kind of the one key, and that's where it was going to be. But here's the one where you guys were going through the Attican Mountains, and you kept popping up into the air with levitate. Ergo, you got spied by bandits.
With air.
Yeah. Tele-air came back.
Yeah.
Well, you would stop and you would levitate to look around. So you go up in the air and you're looking around to try to keep on the track. So in the Attican Mountains, since they're not super steep, but they are tall, it's like you keep levitating up. And that's where the bandits saw you. And this is where you took out the bandits, except for Chuck Morris. And you took him prisoner.
Right.
And you kept him alive. And you determined that he was finally not in league with the orcs. And after a while, you finally gave him a couple of weapons and was like, hey, all right, So
go be an adventurer. Do good.
And actually, he turned into an NPC later.
And then we gave him a couple levels.
He did. Actually, from where he was, it wasn't hard after a few fights. But this was the one where you guys were also tearing through the dungeon, like, before you could even loot, and Tella ended up opening a couple of doors that where a couple of rooms piled in on you at once.
Yeah.
Because we were looking for Tella was looking for
You're looking for prisoners.
The prisoners, yeah.
Right.
Which was funny because the prisoners were in the room that you
Right
ran
there.
past. It's
The
like,
one room we
walk
chose not
past
to
it.
go look at.
yeah, the one room on the hallway where you're like, we'll just skip that door and come back to it. Let's go to the double doors. That's the room where the prisoners were. It was kind of funny. I was, as a DM, I'm like, what are they doing? Oh, well. So
I thought Tella was gonna die in that dungeon.
yeah,
Especially when he got knocked out and then he was being passed over deeper into the room. And I was like, yeah, he's gonna be like killed right now for some kind of sacrificial reason or something's gonna happen. Yeah, like that passing, that was really weird, and I was like, oh my god, something's about to happen.
And this was, I think, one of the first times where you guys ran into somebody who could counterspell. So
yeah, I think so. And silence. It was a silence spell. That's what it was.
it was silence
They
and
threw a
silence and
Yeah.
counterspell, where Zelda was having a hard time throwing fireballs.
Yeah.
So it made it difficult. So yeah, that
what-
actually turned into a pretty tough fight.
But she did get one fireball off
She did.
in the infirmary and kill all the orc
Yeah.
that were healing.
Yes, she did. And this is where you kind of learn the fate of Professor Wendell Gillimore, who had been captured, taken away, and learned that he was being. They thought he could build a teleportation circle, even though he couldn't. So, but he wasn't there. But winter was coming, and so you came back to Fellhammer to winter there, and which was kind of interesting. You guys were from Glissondale, you wintered in Fellhammer, and the guys from Fellhammer wintered in Glissondale. It's weird. He's like, Bellspar, they all went home to Bellspar. So the next was the dread of winter. So this was the episode with the doppelgangers, and this is where the hand starts to come into play. So what do you guys think of this one?
This was probably the hardest emotionally for Tella to play Tella, because like Tella's going through so much during this arc. Like he almost abandoned the group because he felt like his vision wasn't aligned with what the group was doing, and like Tella was close to abandoning the group. And like that point when he was trying to teleport Treant and Tella out of the room, that was my get out card. That was Tella leaving, and then Treant decided to counterspell it.
Cousinly love.
Yeah, inner party conflict. Woo!
Yay! I like when one player counterspells another player's spell. It's like, hey, I didn't have to waste the slot. All right. But yeah, this one was conflicting, right? Because to your credit, you guys were the first ones to set up. You guys set up a sting on night 1. Didn't even make it to night 2. I think the Dragon Slayers did it on night 2, and we won't talk about the Fellhammer 5. They did it on like the last possible night you could possibly do it. Because I had like a 5-day limit before your economy was going to like totally get wrecked. And had they made it all 5 days, the economy in that area would have been completely wrecked. So I had done an average of kind of the other towns to figure out, how fast would they figure it out? How fast would they be able to stop it? That kind of a thing. Except for the 3 towns you guys were in. And then I really kind of left it. It's like, well, if they do it on this day, if a day goes by, it's like 5%, another 5% inflation, another 5% inflation, just to kind of see how it is, and then kind of do an average across the whole valley. So the whole point was to make the party feel it in winter if they didn't respond fast enough to the situation. And for your guys' part, you did pretty well. So you guys kind of figured out the sting here on the first one. But then, obviously now that the hand is involved and, there's people that have been murdered and, it's kind of crazy. And then you went to the warehouse and you figured out that some of the militiamen were under control. And then, were you guys the ones that talked to the horse?
Us by an old lady.
What was that?
And we got our ass handed to us by an old lady.
Oh, the doppelganger? Yeah, that's right. That doppelganger gave y'all some fits, man.
Yeah.
That was intense.
Yeah. kept getting away, you know, hit, run away, and y'all miss on the opportunity attacks or just not be able to get it. And yeah, that was close. That was close. That was probably the closest one to actually getting away. But you did manage to get her.
This is really the first episode where I thought I had suspicions of Thomas being a rogue, being in league with the Hand. You know, I kept on thinking, okay, how much does he know, and how, you know, is he really part of, or trying to find out more about them because he wants to join them, or is he already with them and he's just playing us along? You know,
Eldor the trusting. Eldor's like, I trust nobody.
That's right.
Screw the nobles. Let's talk about Thomas.
But this was also where were you the party that talked to the horse?
Yeah, because I had speak with
Yes,
animals.
that was it. I knew one party talked to the horse that could lead them to where the hobgoblins were. And then, so you guys were the ones that talked to the horse, and he's like, I take the stuff out here, and y'all followed the horse. Yeah, it was funny because one of the other parties, they were like, well, we free the horse. And then they had to go catch the horse and then bring it back to the wagon and hitch it up so that they could ride the wagon out to wherever it was. Because they were like, why did the horse just go out to the forest? Somebody capture the horse. So I had to go catch it. So, yeah, you guys figured that one out pretty good. You kind of excelled on this one, with the exception of the inter-party fighting and suspicion.
Yeah.
So when you did, you found the hobgoblins. They fired a signal arrows. You took them out, and that's when the dragon came in and attacked. And you guys kind of came back in, took care of all the little guys that caused Agrimar to retreat again, and he was gone. But they wanted to strike. Then actually, you guys were settling here in Fellhammer. And this is where you guys started to get introduced to the mass teleportation when Avangard had a plan to go after Darnath, because Darnath had tried to attack Serenshire, failed, tried to attack Avangard, failed, and because they were able to kind of not fully triangulate, but because he flew two different directions, they were kind of able to assume where he was. And they were like, look, this guy's just failed twice. And of course, we had something we didn't really talk about much is there was an NPC campaign that actually dealt with Darnath here. And I know Tella and Treant kind of played in that NPC campaign. So they had actually helped stop Darnath, the army from attacking Serenshire. But here, Avangard sends a call out to the Serend Defenders saying, hey, I know it's winter. We can get you to Avangard if you guys can help us. And then Tella had gotten Teleportation Circle at this point, and he was able to work with Caroline Azurlik, the Exuberant, in order to learn the secret of her circle, and was able then to travel to Serenshire. So you guys basically got this mission because Tella could cast Teleportation Circle at this point. So you were the only party that was going to be capable of moving that quickly in winter to do it, which is why, from Avangard's perspective, you were chosen for this one. And in a way, the reward of it is, which doesn't seem like in a way, it doesn't seem like a big reward unless you really look at the RP perspective. You learned Avangard's Teleportation Circle, which nobody knows. So, a very closely guarded secret, and this is one that you guys actually had access to. So that was kind of cool. At least I thought.
Which they would use regularly.
Yeah, and then it was abused. They're like, oh, by the way. We're like, okay, we're going to have talk on. But here you also learned about the Blue Dragon statue, which was actually Clay Golem, which actually came from a book of golems that the Dragon Slayers of Velspar had found long ago. And Serenshire basically funded the building of it. So it was actually something that was found in game. And when the player, Caroline Azure Lake, retired, the player couldn't play anymore. But gave me the NPC character. And then she went back to Serenshire, where she was from, and with the funding from the town, built the clay golem to protect Serenshire. So you guys also you had to deal with the swamps in this one, go through the Great Woods, and you got to go up against Black Death Waiting, episode 16, where you were one of the first ones to take on and take out an adult dragon who had lair actions.
That was a black dragon, right?
Yeah. That was Darnath, the black dragon.
Yeah.
This was
Which
the one
we
where
did effortlessly.
This was one where Tella was feared and around the corner and kept using Raul's lance, psychic lance, because he knew the name.
That's right.
It's like because he knew the name of the dragon, he didn't have to have line of sight. He kept sending the lance down and around the corner because he couldn't pass his fear save and come any closer.
Yeah. That's why I took Circle of Magic for the next couple of dragon rounds. Need it because I know I couldn't pass any of the fear saves.
And this was also where you found the children who were stolen, kidnapped against in the the Dread of Winter episode, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so all the little kids that were kidnapped, and you freed them. So had you not freed them or found them, or had you like taken too many long rests or something, then they would have been gone, and there would have been other consequences later. But you guys didn't do that. You guys actually hurried through this dungeon pretty quickly and freed them. So, yay! Positive
Yeah, as a
story.
player, this was so rough for me.
And
Like,
there was a day.
It was what?
There was a day named after it.
it's
Yes.
a holiday.
There is. There's a holiday named after it. And this is also where Serend Defenders learned how to bury treasure. Massive amounts of. They're like, oh, look, it's a chest. Do you want to open it? Nope. We're just going to bury it over here. Put an X on the map.
We can teleport everything later.
So, yeah, this was one where they would find treasure because they were in a hurry. They didn't want to stop and count the coins. So they would just bury the chest and come back to it later. They're like, we're just going to clean this whole thing out. They were like, just bound and determined. We're going to wipe out the whole cave and we'll just come back and pick it up on the way out. Which they did. They put it all in a teleportation circle with the kids and then poof, took it to Avangard, where they finished off winter. So, episode 17, White Knights. So this was to go after Mogili, since you had taken out Darnath, and you were on that side of the world. You could get to Serenshire quickly. You were chosen to go after Mogili up in Frostdale. Whereas the Dragon Slayers of Felspar were closer to Fellhammer, so they would go after Agrimar. And this is the time where, remember I mentioned you guys had met Radicus, like way back in your first episode? Radicus, he becomes pivotal here for the Fellhammer 5. And actually is essential in unfolding the grand plot. So just one of those tie-ins of an NPC character you guys had met who kind of comes back for a different group. And so here, you guys took out Mogili. To make kind of a long story short, you had frost giants. So some of the first giants that you guys had really fought, or anybody had fought, I think Dragon Slayers had seen one fire giant, or they'd seen I think one of them had seen a hill giant, but not a lot of giants. So you guys actually there were several frost giants here, if I recall right.
Yeah.
And that hag.
And the hag.
The beer hag, yeah.
And the weren't there drow? No.
The drow were in the one before with Darnath. They were guarding the children.
Yeah, it was the Winter Wolves, the hag, and the frost giants.
Yeah. This was the Winter Wolves. Oh, yeah. This was the one where you built the ice wall that went right in front of the Frost Giant and Remoraz's lair.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and the wall stretched so far that they're sitting in their lair and they're going, the hell's that?
Yeah.
So, once again, 2 rooms at the same time. So, yeah, this group has a tendency.
But we did it.
To do that. But you did it. But we won. You're beat to hell.
Trying
But,
that
yeah.
that was us. I think that was our first time trying so hard not to burn through our resources in the dungeon. Because I remember we just kept on aggroing stuff, and we were like,
Yeah.
okay, we still have to fight a dragon at the end of this, so we can't use any of our stuff.
And they
Which
use their
which
stuff.
which made the battle so much longer, I think.
Yeah. But this group also had the idea of you guys use Leomund's hut a lot, and then you'd put them in like really kind of hard places to find so that you could rest successfully. So kind of like towards the end here, even though you were exhausting resources, you had figured out kind of how to rest in safety, if you will, which was different than some other groups, but a different way to approach that problem. How long did it take to bury the treasure? I forget. I don't know how long it took to bury the treasure. You're real patchy. But it was kind of funny because they would bury it, and then they'd actually put an X on their maps, which was kind of funny.
Yeah, on Mantrian's map. The one thing I regret not doing is being able to cast control weather here. I wanted to do it so bad, just so I can say I said it. I mean, I did it. And what would have happened if I did cast control weather?
So because what was Mogili has what they call a regional effect. So the regional effect isn't immediate. So you would have been able to revert the weather via your spell, but then slowly, once again, his regional effect would take over. So the regional effect was the blinding blizzard that you guys had to trek through to get to his lair. So that's all his regional effect really does. So like the hardest regional effect out of the dragons was probably Cortash's, because it makes a maze thicket, which they had to pass. They had to navigate using intelligence rolls, which they failed the first time. So they went in, had like 2 fights, and came right back out where they started. And then they had to like, okay, how can we boost our intelligence and make better rolls to get through this thing? So Green Dragon's regional effects are probably the roughest from a challenge standpoint. All the others are really kind of, their regional effects are, they're mundane in a way, especially if you're dealing with an adult dragon. Like Agramar's, like Red Dragon's, all water turns to like brine and whatnot, so it's like undrinkable. But when you're that high level, it's like, I've got create food and water.
Just avoid that, yeah.
Yeah, there's ways to avoid it.
But would have Mogili known if I were to revert his?
Oh yeah. If you'd have canceled his weather, yeah, they would have known you were coming for sure, and they would have probably they would have been more ready than for you when you walked in on the Knolls in the first room and were like, hey, smash. You know, if you had canceled the weather, they'd have been barricaded. They would have been on alert.
Yeah.
So yeah, had you done something like that, they would have been alerted for sure.
Okay.
So it was good that you didn't.
Want it so bad. I have the spell. Let me use it.
So this was where I finally got to kind of to wreak havoc on the Trimblewind family here. Episode what is this? 17. But I guess before episode 17, let's talk about what happened in between those last two, right? So between the last two, at some point in time here, you guys did learn about the story of the valley. So you had met, High Lady Ravensair Avantgarde. You learned about Shard. You learned about Selenia Delanar while you were visiting Avantgarde. So this was on a couple episodes before. So let's talk real quick about the old man. So Tella and Trent, Eldor wasn't really directly involved with the old man because he's a half-elf ranger. Wasn't really on the list, but Thomas was. So what did you guys think about the old man? Little old man that would, visit you weird places in the middle of the night. Not creepy at all.
Trent went from being extremely religious, like praying over every slain enemy, to being apathetic to religion because of his father. And then with the old man, he actually ended up being religious again. So it really pushed me as a character. As a player, though, driving back from the store, I would every week, Tella and I would be like, okay, who is he? What does he do? Do we think he's this? Is he Mephisto?
Mephisto. He's from the layers of hell.
So it was really nice, but I wanted to learn more.
I thought he was a god, either a forgotten god or just a god of the valley. That's where my original, theories were going about who the old man was.
And
So
then
I wasn't. It didn't click with me that it was actually. I thought it was Shard at the end. I didn't know about the dragon, of course, but about the silver dragon. But it was actually I guess it's kind of metagamey, a little metagamey. But I was going through the website, and I remember coming around Shar's entry on the website, and I was reading through Shard's entry, and I was like, wait a minute. Then that's when I started. Okay, wait. This is who it is. I actually thought it was Shar. It was towards the half end of us playing, and I was like, it's Shar. It's the old man of Shar. The old man of Shard. And then it turned out to be kind of turned out to be Shard. So
that was where it was kind of meant to lead you, and the entry and everything that I put together was kind of meant to lead a player who dug and thought about it to go that way. And I know one player in the Dragon Slayers of Velspar actually had basically said that out loud, and he was like, it's Shard. It called the old man Shard. So what did you think when you found out like the story, like how the world was created, the fact that the old man's a silver dragon, this is how the valley came to be? What did you think about the world backstory?
Oh, it's crap. Redo it. Sorry.
Go for another one.
I like it. But definitely like 4 or 5 episodes back, I started doing like magic crafting and things like that. So I like the idea of this is why we're so advanced so quickly, like, and it's allows from a metagame point of view, allows us to see our effects almost immediately.
Yeah.
Because if that happens again, like it's a restart, and I really like it, like as a player.
Cool.
How about you two?
No, I enjoyed that story because it did tie in. Because this is I think the first campaign that I've played of D&D where I know the world isn't supposed to be low magic, but it felt low magic because of whatever. At the time, I didn't know the reason. I just thought, oh, okay, it's probably a low magic world, or it's a I don't want to say low magic because it wasn't really low magic. It was dampened magic. And
it was naive in a way.
Yeah, and I didn't understand that at first because this was the first campaign I've ever played in D&D where it felt like it was a not as magical world that as I'm used to with D&D. And then at the end, when you find out the story, it's actually I think it came together really nicely.
Cool.
The one thing I remember now that's coming back to my mind though, because you mentioned earlier about the demons putting the deck of many things for adventurers to find. Didn't the same thing happen to Shard?
In a way. So it happened to him prior to the demons. So backstory, okay. Shard was a character that I actually played in a campaign, who was a lawful neutral. At this point, it was, I think, 2nd edition, I think is when we played it. So humans could what they call dual class back in the day. So he was fighter, cleric, rogue, which is why he would interact with those classes mostly. And yeah, as a character, I got up pretty high level with that character in that campaign. And he had a Fates card from a deck of many things. And I never burned it. It's like he always had it. And when the campaign was over and we stopped, it was like, okay, well. So, years go by. I've never even looked back and was like, what would I do with this character? It's never even a thought until I started creating this world. And I was like, wait a minute. What if, I was just kind of postulating, what if there was a world that had a catastrophe and somebody was here and they were able to get out of it? How could you get out of it? Dude, if you had the Fates card, avoid any situation you choose once. Perfect. You can avoid that. And then a bonded companion, because when we retired in that campaign, he had a dragon, a silver dragon, but it was just a wormling. It was young, so I never really got to do anything with it. So I was like, well, crap, this is 1,000 years later. Well, now it's a great worm if it survives the transformation. So I was like, and if you know about silver dragons like humans, which is why he was, and they're lawful, usually lawful neutral or maybe even lawful good, but they like to mimic humans and interplay with humans. So that's one of the things that they like to do. So it was Selenia who was seeing these adventurers start to adventure, and they kind of, Shard had told her stories and that kind of a thing. And so, but now she kind of wanted to see it for herself, but she was still sworn not to like interfere, because that was kind of, Shard's like, it's not our world anymore. It's like, we don't interfere, So she wanted to kind of guide and maybe give some, life advice, which she did for a couple of characters who were struggling between trying to do things at home and adventure, and they're splitting their time. And when it comes to downtime, all their downtime was now trapped with doing these things at home. And then, so some of the adventures, some characters that they interplayed with, it was able to kind of help them out in certain ways. So that's kind of where that all came from, is actually old adventures.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering. I was trying to wait. Was Shard involved with the demons somehow?
No, not involved with the demons. The demons had just gotten themselves. So what was funny was the demons had gotten themselves on a deck of many things. So the Dragon Slayers got the deck of many things. They were the first ones, and due to the happenstance of the deck of many things, they went on a quest to undo some of the stuff the deck of many things had done, and in doing so, they sacrificed the deck of many things into the Well of Souls. So here goes this thing. It disappears from them. So the demons, for whatever reason, get a hold of it again, and there it is for the Serend Defenders to find. Right? So they're like, oh, put it back into play. So the Serend Defenders find it. So the Serend Defenders had the deck of many things. They drew it, and then Treant took the rest of the cards, put it in his pocket. So he kept it, right? So here comes Fellhammer 5. One of their missions with Fellhammer 5 is they come across the remains of Qualesh's lab. Well, in Qualesh's lab, there's this glass jar, these electrical things, and this button, and a toggle switch. And so they're like, oh, what the hell? Pull the switch. Back. What it does is it summons the deck of many things into the spot. So I remember when Treant finally looked at his character sheet and figured out that the cards weren't there, he's like, what happened? Did they get stolen?
And you all tried to convince me that I gave it away, and I was like, I guess.
I honestly thought you did give it away. I thought we got rid of it somehow.
No, he had held on to it, and when the Fellhammer 5 pulled the switch, and it brings the deck of many things into this jar, and it reshuffles it and resets it for them, right? Because they didn't know what it did. They didn't know what pulling the switch would do. It was one of Qualesh's devices. And so that's how they got a hold of it, and that's how they drew from it. But the problem is they couldn't leave. Well, they could take the lid off the jar, but it was there and kind of glitchy, almost like a hologram or something. They could touch it and they could draw the cards, but they couldn't take a card with them. So they were unable to take the deck with them, but they could draw through it.
How many of them drew?
I think most of them drew. So, and I think the luckiest guy out of all the guys, all three groups, drew the 50,000 GP, which if someone in every group drew that card, the Gems card. Y'all's was the Furbolg. Vonmer was in the Dragon Slayers, and Durnavir drew the 50,000 GPs. But then he drew another card, and he got 2 wishes. So he got 50,000 GP and 2 wishes. Now, the funny thing about that group was actually the entire group drew out of the Fellhammer 5. Because Reamer, the Blade Singer, kept pressuring them to do it. He's like, you got to do it. You got to do it. He's like, he kept pressuring them all to draw until finally he was the last one, and they all pressured him to draw, and he drew the one that took his soul.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So Reamer, it was kind of funny because he was pressuring them all, and then finally they all turned around and looked at him like, eat your words. You said if we all did it, you'd do it. And so he's like, okay, I'll take one. Gone. Out he was.
And then, didn't Xanthos get the experienced one?
Yes, also? Xanthos got the experienced one, which put him basically a level above the other guys. Up until right about now at 10th level, they, it's in the same bracket. So he was 10,000 XP ahead. So yeah, he got a good one. But yeah, that was them. That's how the whole deck of many things went. So anyway, said all that to kind of cover the old man. And at this point, we had, you just killed Mogili, and now you learn Avangard's been attacked. And I did that video online of the meeting in Avangard. What did you guys think about that? How did that work out for you?
I like having the video because taking notes, sometimes I miss things. And so going back and being able to watch the videos, it makes being able to retain things a lot easier.
That's good. That was my hope. That's really what I was hoping for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I liked it because it cleared the air. Because like 3 or 4 episodes before then, there was actually that issue of a certain group reinstating Delmar into nobility.
Who might that group be?
Yeah. Which, the best thing, because the store in which we played has a no cursing policy, and without thinking was like, what the fuck?
Yep, dropped the F-bomb and they heard it from the other side. They were like, yep, that was funny. So this one was also bringing in a giant culmination of all 3 groups that were going to have to do a task with precision. And this was, you had just found out that your what I want to say, not patriarch, tell his mom, matriarch. The matriarch of the Trimblewind family had been assassinated and had her heart cut out, as well as Trian's uncle, the one that raised him.
Father, yeah.
His father, my uncle, yeah.
Father figure. So now it kind of made it personal, right? And so from a story perspective, Thomas's character had been trying to figure out Ghost behind the scenes, and every time he was there, he was dropping Ghosts, dropping names, looking, trying to figure it out. So Ghost finally is like, okay, look, not only does, obviously now at this point, behind the scenes, the Hand's in league with the Delmars, there's Cult of the Dragon, and all 3 are like, look, there's these adventuring groups, and Ghost's like, I can solve one of them. And so he's like, take out them and basically threaten the Serend Defenders. If you come after me, more people are going to die. So stand down. Now, of course, does that ever work for players? No.
Nope.
It wasn't going to work.
Never works for players. And players are like, we're coming right at you, bro. So.
And then this was the time where, because you mentioned that, because Thomas was always like dropping hints at ghosts and whatever, and this ghost, that ghost here. And then when we were like, oh, okay, we need to find the Catman, because the Catman has it out for ghosts just as much. I was convinced. I was even telling Victor this on our drives back home. I was convinced that Thomas was the Catman. I was like,
uh-oh. You got hit with the slow spell.
Oh, there we go. We're getting teleback.
I just think it's funny because.
Yeah. So you kind of froze out there just for a second. We missed a little bit of it.
Oh no!
You said we got to the part of you were convinced Thomas was the Catman.
Yeah, I was convinced he was a Catman because of that. Because it was like, I'm looking for Ghost, and then the Catman has it out for Ghost just as bad, and then Thomas, like Peter as a player, was making Thomas be like, really every time the Catman came up, he would say stuff like, "Oh yeah, I really want to find who this Catman person is too," almost like he's trying to throw us off a trail. And I'm like, "Is he the Catman? I am convinced he is the Catman."
That's funny. So so you had your mission, and you were playing a pivotal part, kind of the in between part, mainly because you guys had the most characters. Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, you guys would have probably gotten trounced by the full aspect if you had to take it down for 570 some odd hit points. And take on Delmar and the guys that were there. You just really didn't have the level. So it was like, I don't think that's going to work. But number two, between you and the Fellhammer 5, you guys had a rogue. Fellhammer 5 doesn't have a rogue. So rogue speak being able to get to the Catman was not going to be in their wheelhouse whatsoever. And the other one is you guys had like 3 or 4 characters who could cast Sending. You guys had the most ways, and you could travel fast, so you could get to Snowshore Harbor relatively quick, comparatively.
Through Tele-Air.
Yeah, through Tele-Air. Fly Teleskies. So you guys kind of had your mission, but your first part was to uncover the Catman, which, you know, how did that play out for you guys? Was it what you expected? Was it pleasant? Was it different?
Oh,
I thought the Catman and the Ghost were initially were the same person, just different aliases in different towns or something. So the fact that they were different surprised me.
That's cool. That's cool. So Tella, check your mic, just see if you got you there.
Oops, my bad.
There he is. All right. So what was that, Tella, about the Catman?
Oh, just that I was still convinced that Thomas was the Catman.
Still convinced.
To that point, I was like still convinced Thomas was the Catman.
Well, you guys managed
to be him.
You guys managed to lure him out, and you kind of learned his story. So you got his story, and then you were able to recruit him to help you infiltrate the Hand's base. So, taking out the Hand, you had to get the Orb of Bound Legends, which you did. You had to get the Orb of Calling. And so as a DM, I was actually keeping very meticulous track of the time. And I kind of figured out how many rooms there was, how fast you were going, what your estimated time would be. And actually, to my surprise, you all hit it pretty well. The only group that didn't was the Fellhammer group. And it only really cost them because they weren't able to cast the Hallow spell. To get it off in time. But other than that, the Dragon Slayers and Serend Defenders pretty much nailed their time estimates almost to the button.
It only took us 16 episodes to finally learn resource management.
Yeah.
But that entire dungeon, yeah, there were a couple times that we screwed up mechanically, but compared to everything else, it was perfect.
Yes. I if there was a way to finish it off on a positive note, that was it. That was probably the epitome of group organization for the Serend Defenders. That was their pinnacle. They reached their pinnacle right there when everything mattered the most.
Yeah. What was it? I did 2 counterspell crits.
Yeah.
With the
that's right. Yeah.
And those were big ones too.
Yeah. Time Stop and what was the other one? Finger of Death. Finger of Death.
Time Stop and Finger of Death. Counterspell both of them.
So scared. Like as a player, I was like, we're gonna die.
You made that particular fight. You really made it a nothing burger. Because if he's able to get the Time Stop off, he's able to buff up. Like we're talking Mirror Image, Fire Shield, all of these things that he can throw up that don't require concentration, and then they stay. So it makes trying to deal with him a lot harder, but he's got to get it off. And if he can't get off the Time Stop, it turns into a giant nothing burger. All he's going to do is he's going to try to throw Finger of Death and just, but counterspelled that, and then it was like pretty much game over.
Yeah.
Totally wrecked him. So destroyed the Orb of Bound Legends. That was, you did that on perfect timing, which helped the Dragon Slayers in their fight against Tiamat big time, because those legendary actions are ruthless. And then, poof, you guys got Tiamat, and you had to deal with him for half-life. But you also had to deal with Ghost. Ghost was tough. His ability to hide after attacking makes him pretty hard until you get right up on him. So how was that as far as, I guess, a climactic adventure?
I thought Ghost was harder to deal with than the Aspect.
On a one-on-one basis, he's hard to find.
Yeah.
He was still hard to actually get a good hit on, yeah.
Yeah. But Tiamat's just like, taste the rainbow.
Yeah, I mean, just dealing damage but at least we could attack back and feel like, okay, you hit us, we can hit you back. Ghost was like, okay, we got smacked in the face and like swing at air.
Yep. High level rogues that can do that. That can, with minimal cover, just as a bonus action, hide.
Just slink back into the shadows.
Yeah, it's hard to deal with. It makes them tough.
And the only thing that I think made us like, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of the word right now.
Successful.
Like survive that encounter was Treant's death wards. If it weren't for the death wards, he put death wards on all of us.
True.
We wouldn't have been able to get out. Yeah, because I was thinking that we were all going to die, or at least half of us were going to die.
So I had seen Treant use death wards a couple of times prior to this, and I was actually really wondering if you were going to make grand use of it during this encounter, and sure enough, he did. And yes, that was pivotal, because I think you saved 4.
Yeah,
at least 4 people that would have gone out of the fight. Their death wards fired off, which was
I have 2 jobs: death ward and to be a giant crab.
Yes. Yeah. Well, lots of hit points. Definitely pivotal. So, and then obviously your plan was successful, and now you come to find out the Fellhammer 5 was successful, with the one exception of you got him bloodied, you killed the orb, and then somebody went, "We didn't send a sending." Oh yeah. Hey, by the way, it's coming.
Yeah.
So was that the reason they didn't get the hallowed spell off? Okay.
No, that's
that wasn't
the reason.
our fault.
No, that's the reason they weren't able to set a true ambush, is because they didn't know exactly when he was coming. The reason they didn't get the hallow spell off is because they like to do these rituals of detect magic and identify over everything. 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. They ended up like 90 minutes behind the clock. So they ended up starting their hallow ritual basically 90 minutes from the time where you guys were estimated to finish. And so as they came down to it, they were getting sendings from the lawgivers, because you guys would report in, Dragon Slayers reported in, done. You guys report, done, or we're on our way. And they send sendings to them, and they're like 2 hours out, and they're, the priest is going through the ritual. He's like, I got 3.5 hours left on this thing. Crap. Right. So their cleric was the only one who didn't get a rest. All the rest of them were able to long rest because they're just chilling on the plateau. So their cleric didn't get that long rest, and basically he's like, screw it, set it up. It's like, we're not going to make it with the hallow spell, so get ready to grab it with the claws. So
and that's what they did.
And so it worked. And so that was the campaign. So anyways.
Oh wait, can we also talk about how we all bonded over doing an evil act of mutilating Ghost's body? Like, it was like 4 or 5 of us were like, I carve his heart out, I cut his hands off.
We'll take a couple steps towards neutral. That's fine.
Yeah. So what is it? The Tremblewinds and the Sopranos apparently have something in common.
Yeah, I told
Who knew? Who knew?
Eldor knew.
Eldor knew.
You don't cross the nobles.
So that was the campaign. Overall, what did you guys think? Any final thoughts?
I'm really excited to see what our characters do in the world, like as NPCs, to see how they change and move things around.
Yeah.
That I'm really excited about, and I am excited about the next campaign. Like, I'm ready to play Second Age.
So I think, in fact, all 3 players here you're all 3 in the Second Age, even though you're Eldor, it will be split away from Tella and Treant. But play with some new players, because you guys are going to play with some new players. Actually, out of the Serend Defenders, you are the 3 from the Serend Defenders that are coming in. So everybody else you're playing with, while you've met them, and we had the one NPC campaign, it'll all be kind of new groups. What are your thoughts about playing Second Age?
Well, Eldor's playing a noble this time, right?
Yeah.
Not a chance. And actually, what's funny is it's not far away.
Yeah. Because I work, or my family has worked for the nobles in Glissondale
Yes.
or Avangard?
In Glissondale.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
He's
Yeah.
almost at
We're the best
courtesan. He's
noble
almost
guard.
at courtesan level, but he works for he works for the city, which of course is run by nobles.
yeah.
So
I see.
it's kind of funny. This character is going to be a lot more tied to the family wise to politics, but not quite.
Yep.
We couldn't bend him that far.
Yeah. Third age, though. Third age.
Third. Anything
looking
else you're
forward
looking
to it.
forward to, second age, or any other last thoughts about the first age?
I didn't feel done, like as we've discussed. I wanted like a few more, but at the same time, like I think that's the best way. It's because it's much better to end earlier than those campaigns that you're just like, can we just retire?
Cliffhanger.
Like, yeah.
Or you start something you're unable to finish too. Yeah, it's like I can't play. The number of campaigns in my life where it's like, oh, and we're getting right to and somebody moved, and it's like, oh, great.
Yeah.
I only needed just one more level for Tella, just so I can get my title. Just so he can be a spell singer or Tella Tremblewind. That's the only reason I needed it. So I can get my ability score increase.
Well, I am thinking of having opportunities to bring back the old gang. Now, it may not be like the Serend Defenders, but you could play your old characters. I'm gonna look for some spots like in the schedule to try to weave that in, because I don't want to, I want the characters to still be around. I want the NPCs to still be around. I think one of the things that I like about kind of starting the second age is, number one, I think you guys all now have a good sense of how the world works, how I work as a DM, how mechanics are kind of working. So from the first age perspective, it kind of worked because all of the players really were discovering the world too, not just as players, but as characters. So that naivete was not just from a player's perspective, it was a character's perspective as well, so it worked. Your second age characters, well, you as players kind of have an understanding of the world and how it works. And so your second age characters, if you role play it, they'll have that same little bit of naivete, but at the same time, they're going to have some history, which is drawn from the first age, that they can leverage within their characters. So they'll be aware of certain things and events, which as a DM, I'm hoping to kind of weave some of that history back into new storylines. But as players, I'm hoping that you guys now, having the sense of the world and the valley and places and what these places are like, and your characters will by proxy have that same sense of, well, this place is like this is what's normal. And so you won't be far, as you're role playing and working your new characters, it's like you won't be off too far out of bounds where I got to be like, no, you're not going to know that, because now you guys kind of have a sense of what's known and what's not known. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and at the same time, I think all 12 players, all 12 characters are starting off even too at this level, right? So I don't have staggered groups anymore. Now they're all kind of going to be on the same playing field. So bragging rights are for those that can earn them now, not just for those that started earlier. One of the things I am going to do for sure is I started experimenting at the end of that age where the dungeons were kind of preset. These dungeons in the first 8 episodes which is basically 4 episodes for each group, they're preset, meaning the treasures that are there are there. I don't know which group is going to go where. And there will be things that make sense. If you go to water things, you could probably expect water things, or if you go to, that kind of a thing, right? They'll kind of make sense in a way. But the players, you guys as players and characters, will have that choice of choosing kind of which dungeon to go through. So maybe not super open world, but your choice will really determine your reward. It's not tailored directly for you per se, especially at the early levels, and you can kind of get away with that. Later on, of course, I'll start, kind of fill in, things I think you might need as far as treasure and things like that. But in the early levels, I'm going to really see how it plays out, to see how much your decisions really kind of impact your rewards. I'm going to give that a shot. So little heads up. So that's it, man.
Will the second age have more magic than the first age?
I can't give that secret away.
Okay.
We'll have to see what happens over, the couple of years that pass. I can probably tell you that nobody's going to be selling magic items because you guys sure as hell never sell any. It's like all the players, all y'all just hoarded it. And then they kept asking, is there a magic shop? Like, who's selling it? You guys have it all. Everybody wants to buy magic items, but nobody wants to sell them. So we'll see.
That's honestly part of the reason why I made sure to make an artificer, because that's going to be hilarious, because he just likes pretty things. So.
Yeah. Well, you'll have, the magic crafting rules are out there for a reason, and the hardest part about it, of course, is getting the component, the monster component that you need. That's definitely the hardest part. Well, guys, this has been fun. Actually, I didn't think we'd go whole 2 hours, but we did. Maybe it was just me rambling, but I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, this was fun.
It was amazing.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining.
It was great.
Thank you guys for joining, and for anybody watching, we have the Fellhammer 5 recap tomorrow. But this has been a good time. Tella, Trient, Eldor, I can't wait to see what your NPCs do, even though I already know. And I can't wait to see you guys in the second age. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for having the chat. And we will see everybody later. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you.
I just realized he ended the starting it down.